Southwest Florida's newest game in town brings you all the NFL action that you're asking for. Lloyd and Kevin have all the news, updates, trades, and rumors from the NFL. Lloyd Vance's Insider Football on Sports Radio 102.9 The Game starts now.
Lloyd Vance's Insider Football is back for another week here on 102.9 The Game and the Coastal Sports Network. So glad everybody can join us. Kevin is with me as usual. Kevin Midgette. You can find him on X at Philly Kevin, especially for all his Niners fans out there, and Cowboys fans. But Kevin is back with us. We're excited. We'll have Nate on. Got the midway point again. He has one more fantasy corner he wants to go over. And we'll wrap up this show. We'll talk about the AFC East, which, Angel found this surprising. Nathan, a kid that grew up in the Philadelphia area, he's a Buffalo fan. So we're going to see what he has to say about the AFC East. So, but jumping right into the news and notes here on Lloyd Vance Insider Football. Kevin, a couple things came out, and I wanted to get your take on it right away. Jordan Love, he is not practicing. He said, I ain't practicing until I get an extension. And, we always talk about the holdout watch list. What are you thinking here? Do you think this gets done? It's just posturing. What do you think?
I believe it's going to be done within the next 36 hours. I think it's a good sign that Jordan Love has showed up for everything he's had to show up for, be it for him not to get fined and lose money. That being said, Green Bay's got to get this taken care of and put it to bed already. It's like you don't want any distractions on especially a young team, the youth that they have there. You don't need any setbacks to take away from what they did at the end of last season. They need to get it done.
Yes, I agree with you. And you see Trevor Lawrence getting $55 million plus per season, the highest paid quarterback. You knew this was coming. All the younger guys, Jordan Love, Brock Purdy, they're all going to be looking for their paydays. And ideally, it does seem to be Jordan Love's turn. Let's not forget he had to wait. He did wait behind Aaron Rodgers for a couple years. And last year was his breakout year. So, recently it seems like these quarterbacks are getting paid sooner rather than later. And you saw that a couple years ago with Jalen Hurts. He got paid probably a little early by the Philadelphia Eagles, and a lot of these teams are taking that precedent. So I do agree with you that he will get his money. But it was interesting. The Packers did sign Kenny Clark, their nose tackle, who's a perennial Pro Bowler. He gave him a 3-year extension, $64 million. And I always find that interesting. I always remember at the training camp in the locker room, you'd hear some players mumbling, man, he got his money. What about me? What do you think about that?
I think it's any job you work at. Somebody, if they find out what someone else is making, all of a sudden they're not making enough, It's like they'll say to the guy's face, it's like, oh, congratulations and everything else. But it's like, man, I'm better than him. Where's my money at, And
right.
I think we talked about it last week as well. With these young quarterbacks getting signed earlier now, it's because the market's going through the roof. So you're basically rolling the dice. It's like, all right, this is my guy for the next 5 solid years. I better get him at a cheaper price this year as opposed to what it'll be next year.
It's crazy, Kevin, because they're talking about $60 million a season to one of these quarterbacks. And we know they're not going to deserve it. And it's obviously not going to be Patrick Mahomes. He seems to be taking that Tom Brady model where he's going to keep his contract kind of in, the mid-range, lower end, rather than take the big kick and caboodle because he wants to win. And unfortunately, when you're paying a quarterback a lot of money, it just becomes a hamstring to the team. That you just can't make a lot of other moves. And a team definitely feeling this, and it came out this week. The Cleveland Browns, Amari Cooper, he entered the holdout watch list, and we've talked all along about the Cleveland Browns and that bad situation they got themselves in by giving Deshaun Watson that fully guaranteed contract. And now Amari Cooper wants to get paid, and I just don't know if there's going to be enough on the table for him.
I don't think there is at all. I don't think Amari Cooper is that guy where I'm going to lock him up. I can find another Amari Cooper down the road. When you get to like Myles Garrett, and then you have money locked up in Deshaun Watson, let's admit it, that contract's an albatross. They're not getting out from under that one. But the money that you do have, the crumbs you have left, I'm not wasting on Amari Cooper.
Yeah, and the thing about Amari Cooper, people have to remember, he started with the Raiders, then Dallas. He probably had his best seasons with Dallas, and now he's with Cleveland. And I'm not saying he's on a downturn of his career, but he's definitely not at the beginning. And receivers position now, where you have these guys like Rome Odunze and Harrison Jr. coming into the league, and people are excited about them, and you fully expect them to produce right away. So these veteran guys, it's going to be tough for them to get that big payday. We're just going to have to see how this one plays out. But obviously, in training camp, you can be fined up to $50,000 per day if you're under contract. So players, buyer beware. So definitely contract holdout time around in the National Football League, and then that's what we're starting to talk about first this week on Lloyd Vance's Insider Football on 102.9 The Game on the Coastal Sports Network. Thanks for joining us. You can also join us via text or call 727-858-6650. Definitely check out all the great stuff at Coastal Sports Network. On X, we're at CSN Florida. Check us out there. So glad you could join us for another evening. Kevin, a couple other things before we jump back to our one question thing that we started last week. The CBA won't be done until 2030, so negotiations aren't there. But Joe Burrow brought up a very interesting thing at the beginning of training camp. He started talking about an 18-game schedule. And I was just wanting to get your take in terms of health of players. Is this feasible? And do you see this happening?
It's inevitable it's happening. That was the whole thing with the 17-game schedule. They wanted to have it at 18 from jump. The thing is, they couldn't really, with the CBA and the players, it's like they wanted to ease them into it like it was a hot bathtub. You just don't jump into it. So it's like, let's ease you into these 17. We'll cut out a preseason game. The whole goal, the whole time, was to go to 18 games. And there's more money, there's more revenue. And if you ask me at the end of the day, does management, do the owners care about the players? Not so much, man. It's a business. They're trying to make money. And when it comes to the end of the day, that's what they're going to do.
Yes, and Kevin, they're the product. That's what these players are. And I know they have a family and friends, and people seem to forget that when the gambling's involved, the fantasy football, there are people in those uniforms. But to these owners, they love the revenues, and in another game will definitely bring more eyeballs to TVs, larger contracts. They're talking to all the streaming services. They're talking about Netflix. Last year, I pulled the numbers. The NFL had $13 billion in revenue. That's the pot they split. So every team got a little over $400 million in their coffers. And that was up 68% from 2022. So we know the NFL had all the highest rated shows, even higher than the Oscars, everything. We're talking about regular season games, not just the Super Bowl, which is the king of everything. But this is what people are watching. So the NFL, them. The owners like that money, so they're right. I think they go for that 18th game as soon as that CBA runs out in 2030. And the players, they need to understand they're bringing something to the table too. So maybe they should get a little something extra thrown their way. They're never going to get guaranteed contracts, which I've always thought is a travesty in terms of all the other sports that guaranteed contracts except football. So something to chew on. And, unfortunately, in today's world of sports, you always got to talk about the money aspect of these things. And I don't begrudge any player, though, for holding out or trying to get a little bit more, especially in football, because the average career is still only, I think it's about 2 to 3 years for a lot of these guys. And then they got to find new work. And if you're that special teams guy, a second string guy, your career can be very short. We always hear the contract numbers for these quarterbacks, but there are so many other guys that they just, they have to wait it out and then just see how long their career ends. All right. So, Kevin, last week we started a fun thing. We talked about like one question motto for all the teams. We got through all the NFC. I think we did do one of the AFC teams. So we'll start there again. The Chiefs. Can they three-peat? We'll start with them again. I know there's a lot of moving parts. They drafted a receiver in the first round to come in worthy. Travis Kelce's back. What are you thinking in terms of the Chiefs? Can they three-peat, which has not been done in Super Bowl history?
I know last week I said, they're the champs until somebody beats them. I've pondered this for a week now. I thought about it. No, they're done. That's it. That's the run. I'm flip flopping on myself right now. This has to be the year where Travis Kelce just regresses to a fact. I don't know if it's the whole year of the Taylor Swift thing, and he's got to get back into that shape right now and to be that guy for the whole season. I think Kansas City, and I've always been so impressed by the fact they've won these Super Bowls without that huge wide receiver. At a certain point, it's got to come back and bite them. And I don't see. I mean, they brought in Hollywood Brown, who could be serviceable. We'll see what Rice is going to have going on this year. Worthy as well. I like Pacheco, actually. I do like him. But there has to be a season where it's like, you know what? Because think about it this way. I'll put it this way. You have to have the moons and stars aligned as far as injuries, as far as peaking at the right time. And it's got to be one of these years where it's like, you know what? You're a little snake bit this year. So I would go against Kansas City. I have flip-flopped on myself.
Yeah, and you know what? I think they can do it, but I agree with you that so much of a confluence of things has to come together for a team to win the Super Bowl. And Andy Reid, we both remember him from his time here in Philadelphia. He didn't make the right adjustments and this and that, but he's always pushed the right buttons with the Kansas City Chiefs. And I think they can get back to the Super Bowl, but as you said, winning it may be a tough proposition because they're the hunted now, and everybody's looking at all the tape. They're trying to figure out how to beat them. They've had good health at key moments of the season, particularly down the stretch, and that's always going to be a factor too. And defensively, they lose to L'Jarius Sneed. They traded him to Tennessee. That was a big loss for them. Jones is another year older in the middle of their defensive line, and Spagnuolo did a nice job with his adjustments. You just wonder, how many fingers do you have in a dam before it breaks? So we'll see how this turns out.
Yeah, I definitely believe one thing though, Lloyd. I have to say is
Mhm.
Kansas City. I think they're ripe for. I wouldn't say ripe for the pick, and they're probably going to win the division. I mean, if you beat them in the championship game, I mean that's a big victory right there. That being said, who's going to take it from them? Who in that list of teams is going to take it from them? I can't wait to get into this.
Yeah, and that's fun, because I look at their schedule. They start with Baltimore. They have Cincinnati, at Atlanta, at the Chargers. They have New Orleans on a Monday night. Their bye is early, week 6, and we talk about that health factor there. Then they're at the Niners, at the Raiders, Tampa Bay, Denver. Week 11 is going to be fun. They're at Buffalo, at Carolina, Raiders again, Chargers, at Cleveland, Houston. That'll be a fun game. At Pittsburgh and at Denver. So there's some winnable games in there, but also there's some pitfalls. And as you were saying, it's just going to be fun to see how they manage it. All the eyeballs on them. A lot of people are starting to get Patrick Mahomes fatigue. If you remember the Michael Jordan, after he started winning so many times, like, all right, I'm tired of this guy. So, yeah, we're going to see if the Chiefs can pull off that three-peat. All right, Chargers, new coach. They kick Brandon Staley out the door. They bring in Jim Harbaugh over from the national championship Michigan team. So, new coach. Is it going to be a new Chargers?
Not this year. I mean, it's just they have so much to do, and I am a Justin Herbert guy. I think the guy is very talented. Their wide receiver pool right now. They drafted Ladd McConkey, basically, the second round, I believe. They picked him up. You have Quentin Johnston coming back. You have Palmer, who's an undersized wide receiver, and your running backs at this point are the Baltimore Ravens cast off from injuries. You got Dobbins there. You got Gus Edwards. I just don't know what they can do offensively to be a winning franchise this year.
It's going. I think they'll be a little better with Harbaugh bringing that disciplined style. They'll know how to finish games. It won't be like with Staley. They lost so many games at the last possession. I think they'll be better defensively, and they could go after that number 7 spot since there's 7 teams in the conference. But obviously, I don't think they're ready to challenge the Chiefs. But they're going to be fun to watch. Herbert's got to step it up. I always talk about this with my sons. He's that name brand guy. Everybody said, oh, well, he led the NFL in passing, et cetera. But he's really never equated that to making the playoffs and driving his team down this stretch run. So it's going to be fun to see if Justin Herbert can make that leap that we were talking about just a few minutes ago with Jordan Love. All right, we're on Lloyd Vance Insider Football here on 1029 The Game on the Broad Street South Network and Coastal Network. Here with Kevin Midgette, we're continuing our one question, one motto type scenario for each team. We're in the AFC side of things. The Raiders. Who is going to be the quarterback, and can Antonio Pierce survive? So it's a combo one.
I think the Raiders are in that quagmire of the middle of the conference. I think they're the same as, say, like, they're a lesser version of the Colts and maybe even the Jaguars to an extent. The Steelers are in that mix, but the Raiders are just under those teams right there. I think they're a 7-win team. I don't see them being anything great, that's for sure. And they're not putting fear in any other teams they're playing, that's for sure.
Yeah, they have Devontae Adams and not much else. Aiden O'Connell, Gardner Minshew, are either of them scaring anybody around the National Football League that they're going to be the starter, and it's going to be interesting to see which one of them get picked. But I think the Raiders they behoove themselves to lose and then tear this thing down and rebuild it. So, yeah, I think they're in for a long season. Denver Broncos. Are we in a 5-year rebuild with this team? This is another one. Denver Broncos, they get rid of Russell Wilson. Sean Payton, they gave draft picks up to get him from New Orleans, but they have not equated to wins. Another team, you wonder who's going to be their quarterback. It's going to be Zach Wilson or any of these other guys.
I still can't fathom the fact why Peyton would take that gig. I don't. That situation had nothing that was going to be like, oh, this is a great spot for me. Like, I get why Harbaugh picked the Chargers. It's like, all right, give me Justin Herbert. I got to start right there. I'm going to go to Denver. You got old Russell Wilson there. I think Denver, I believe, the New England Patriots, and throwing Tennessee, they're the bottom of the barrel of the AFC. And you're right, as far as when you were saying about the Raiders, it applies to the Broncos. Keep losing. Just keep losing. That's how much you need right now.
Yeah. I agree. It's going to be a long season out there in the Rockies, and Peyton doesn't have much patience, so it's going to be fun to watch. We'll jump over to the AFC North, which is the first division since 1935 where all the teams had a winning record. So AFC North, we'll start with the Steelers. Does Tomlin have his quarterback in Russell Wilson? Or Justin Fields? Does he have his quarterback?
I think both of them play this year, that's for sure. I think both of them are going to get some reps. The one thing we've talked about before, one of the things I really love to see is how Tomlin always finishes 500 or better. He has his work cut out for him this year because I believe their bye this year falls around week 9, somewhere in there. But I know week 9, the back end of their schedule, they play all their division games on the back end of the schedule, and they also have the Chiefs and the Eagles in that mix as well. So he's got to get out of the gate strong if he's trying to hit that 500 mark and make the playoffs again.
Yeah, you're correct. This is the first time I really jumped in their schedule. At the end, they do got a tough one. They do got Carolina in week 14, which won't be so bad. But, they have some tough games, man. Eagles, Ravens, Kansas City Chiefs, and then they finish with Cincinnati. So it's – I've been debating that they have a chance to win the division, but I may change that pick. So, but we'll go over them soon. All right. So, yeah, I think the Steelers will be a little better because they'll have a nice quarterback finally in there. Kenny Pickett was just not doing anything. He's now the Eagles' backup. And I think Wilson will give some stability, but I also do agree Justin Fields may get opportunities because Russ is getting a little older. He may get injured. Underperformance, we're not sure. Speaking of the Steelers' biggest rivals, the Baltimore Ravens, are they ready to make that next step? They keep, last year they were the number 1 seed in the AFC. They finally won a playoff game, but they had that home AFC championship game, and they couldn't get it done against the Chiefs. And Harbaugh was just on the news the other day. He's telling everybody, Lamar Jackson's the best quarterback in football, get off his back, et cetera, that type of rhetoric. What do you think about the Ravens? Can they make that leap, or are they going to fall back to group this year?
They're a consummate contender the way Harbaugh has that team there. They're going to be in the mix. If they get the right set of cards dealt to them, Lamar stays healthy, they could play an AFC Championship game again. There's no doubt about it. But can they win the Super Bowl? Can they get all the way? That remains to be seen with that team. But yeah, I mean that's a 12-win team probably right there this year.
Yeah, I think they will be in the mix just because they just have that consistent Raven way of playing. They're going to run the football now. Derrick Henry's there. We'll see about the offensive line with Ronnie Stanley and those guys. They got to have health, but they have that great defense they could build around. And then Jackson will make some splash plays. So I think they'll be in the mix for their division, but I just don't know if they're ever going to make that leap into true Super Bowl contender. All right, the Cleveland Browns. We were just talking about them and their money cap situation. When is Watson's contract over? That's the motto for this team. It's albatross, as you were saying. When are they going to be able to get rid of this guy? Or what do you think about their season?
With that defense that they have there in Cleveland, you're going to be in competitive games. If you can score 21 points, chances are you can win a football game there. But I don't know if they can score 21 points. I mean, they brought in Jerry Jeudy, who throw a flyer on him, see what you got there, especially with the Cooper situation going on. It makes a lot more sense now. Nick Chubb's still injured. He might get him back October, November. It depends how everything goes with his knee. They have Ford as their other running back. But the one thing I saw as well, if I'm not mistaken, they have the hardest teams against them record from last season. Their schedule was loaded from teams that were very good last year, so they have to deal with that.
Yes, they're going to play the NFC East. So they start with Dallas, then they're at Jacksonville. They have at Philadelphia in week 6, Cincinnati after that, then Baltimore. They finally have their bye in week 10. They have the Steelers game week 12. At the Steelers again in 14. Then they have Kansas City in 15, at Cincinnati, Miami, and then finish at Baltimore. So you're right, they got a tough schedule, And that division, as I said, all the teams have winning records. So somebody's got to take a step back, and I have a feeling it may be them. Last year they had a magic carpet ride with Joe Flacco. We'll see if they're able to continue or just kind of fall back to the pack. And we're talking about one question for each team here on Lloyd Vance Insider Football on 102.9 The Game, Broad Street South Network, and a Coastal Sports Network. Glad you could join us this evening. Let's jump over to the AFC South. The Jaguars. Lawrence gets the bag. Now what? So he got all the money. Highest paid guy. They lost it. Let's not forget, they lost at the end of the season to the Texans, did not win the division. And this division's gotten better. I think the Colts are going to be a better team. The Titans may struggle, but they got a lot of new free agents and new faces in there and a new head coach. So what do you think about the Jaguars?
Well, one thing I want to point out, we forgot one team, the Cincinnati Bengals.
Oh, yeah. Oh.
The other reason I bring it up, there's two things with the Cincinnati Bengals right now. One is, how's Joe Burrow? How healthy is Joe Burrow all season? If you have a healthy Joe Burrow and the way they've upgraded that offensive line, Cincinnati goes to the Super Bowl this year. They're a team that can take out Kansas City. Burrow plays well against Kansas City. He's not scared of them by any means. And that's the only reason I brought that up. I was like,
no, you're right.
Cincinnati's a team that can
challenge it out. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it was for the Bengals. Burrow is back. Is it enough? And the key thing is he's been in the league over 4 years or so, and he had 2 exceptional seasons. One of them where he went to Super Bowl, and then he had 2 where he was very injured. Particularly last year, he had the wrist injury that took him out after I think like week 6 or somewhere around there. So they need him healthy, but I think they're a team that's going to be in the mix because they do have a lot of firepower. Jamar Chase and Higgins is still there. I know he's complaining about his contract, but they seem to be ready for that bounce back. And they were right in the mix, as I said, last year. They had a winning record, just missed the playoffs at 7 spots. So I think, the Bengals will be jumping right back into the fray this season. Now, what do you think about the Jaguars? Trevor Lawrence, he gets the money, and Peterson's there. We talked about, is he on a hot seat? He's kind of living off of winning that Super Bowl in Philadelphia. What do we think about the Jaguars?
I think Dougie P's done a very good job there. They have the guy they spent the money on, so now he has to back it up and get them deeper into the playoff run. Also, I think it comes down in that division. Whoever goes 2-0 against the Titans wins that division. Because it's one of those things, these teams are so closely rated next to each other, they're going to need that one win. If one of them loses a division game to the Titans, that's going to set them apart there in a bad way.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. They got Christian Kirk, who they need to stay healthy. He was one of those guys that was very key for them, and on the offensive side of the football, and then defensively, uh, they allowed a lot. They have a lot of names on that defense, but they have to play better. So they just can't lean on Hines, Allen anymore. In terms of getting pressure, they have to have other guys step up. I know they have number one draft picks on that defense, guys from the past. They have to step forward. All right, the Colts. Ken Richardson lead this team. He only played like 4 games. Some say he plays reckless. He runs very hard and he's a playmaker, but he's got to stay healthy. Ken Richardson lead this team at the quarterback?
It's a big thing to see what Richardson does this year. Because say he goes out and he gets hurt again in that first month, he's that guy then. He's a guy who's always injured. He has to play a whole season. If not, you're going to start looking back saying this was a wasted pick by the Colts. And, how far is that going to set back the franchise? Offensively, rather, they have weapons out there. They can put some points up. But you're going to have to see how that first month plays out with Richardson, how he looks.
Yeah, and they have Pittman Jr., Jonathan Taylor, who they gave the bag to, and I think the Colts are going to be a dangerous team if he can stay healthy. Steichen has done a great job with them, I think they're going to be a good team. The Titans, we talked about them, and is Will Levis the answer at quarterback? I just don't think he is. I think they brought in some talent. Calvin Ridley. We talked about L'Jarius Sneed. They brought in some pieces as well as a new head coach. But is Levis enough? And I think we both kind of agreed that the Titans were going to be the team that's in the basement in this division. But what do we think about the Titans?
If I'm a Tennessee fan, I'm so buying that fool's gold of Levis's debut with 4 touchdowns. Oh, he's that guy. He's got it in him. He's got it in him. No, he just had a game. That's what it is, and they're all hanging on to it. Tennessee's got a way to go. They got to build. They got to break it down more before they can build it up. So I think it's a 4-win team, 5 wins max.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. And they made a lot of changes, and Vrabel had that team humming. They're a veteran team. They did it like not the Patriot way, but they definitely leaned on his leadership, and they were a team. They overachieved, a lot of times with him. So it's going to be interesting to see if that team can come on, take that step forward. But I think without Derrick Henry, who was their engine, I just don't think they're going to be the same team. All right, one more in the AFC South, and then we'll bring Nate in, and we'll start talking about we'll do the one question as we do our preview with the AFC East. All right, the Houston Texans, NFL's new explosive unit. They're just bringing in guys all over the place. I just saw they signed Cam Akers today to go with Joe Mixon, Diggs, and all the other little toys for Stroud, who was Rookie of the Year. They had the Will Anderson, Defensive Rookie of the Year. And I think D'Amico Ryans was Coach of the Year. So everybody is talking up this team. What are we thinking about the Texans?
They're the new media darling right now. They're the young blood. And the one thing you have to give that franchise credit for, ownership, everyone, they didn't just sit on that one nice season. Yeah, let's go get Stephon Diggs. Yeah, let's go get Joe Mixon. They're going for it. They're not just like, oh, we're just going to ride this little wave out. No, they're trying to become a superpower in that conference. They're going to be a really fun team to watch this year.
Yeah, they are. It's going to be interesting to see if they have that maturation process. They even won a playoff game. Then they kind of got smacked around the next round. But, this is a young team that I think can definitely make some strides. CJ Stroud, though, he cannot have that regression. So we'll see what they have. All right, he's back by popular demand. We got Nate Vance back with us, mass communications major, Misericordia University, football player too over there. All right, Nate, we're going to incorporate our one question with our preview. All right, so we so what we'll do is we will go through each of the teams. I'll start an AFC South preview. We'll start with probably who's going to be in the basement. The New England Patriots. I think everybody knows this team is going to be terrible. The one question I have is Mayo's in, no talent on roster. So what are we thinking in terms of New England Patriots? I'll let Nate go first.
9 weeks. So you should see Drake May in there, and they should look to have the first overall pick this year.
Yeah, what do you think, Kevin?
I think if you're a New England Patriots fan and you're at the game, you're going to spend most of the second half looking up at the lights, looking at the banners. Hey, remember that championship? Hey, remember that one? They're going to start telling stories about the year they went on these runs. That was fun, wasn't it? Oh, yeah, that was fun. We'll look down at the field. Hey, we're down 32-3. I think that's going to be the extent of the Patriots season. They might win, and this is me stretching it, 4 games. They might be the worst team in the NFL.
I agree with you. I think they're going to struggle a lot. I was looking at their roster, and it's just devoid of talent all over. They always say who could start for another team other than Matthew Judon and maybe Christian Gonzalez and Kyle Duggar on their defense. They really don't have a lot of guys that could start for other teams around the NFL. And to point out how bad this team was last year, they only scored 13.9 points per game. So offense just challenged. I think you guys are both right. I think it's a tear down year. Elliot Wolf's in there trying to run the personnel department for Belichick after he left, and he's got a lot of work ahead of him. So I think the Patriots probably are 4 wins or less team. So not much else to say there. Let's go to everyone's darling team. Everybody's been talking these guys up, and it started last year. And what did it last? 4 snaps? And that's I'm talking about the New York Jets and Aaron Rodgers. So the question for the Jets is Rodgers, Salah, is this their last ride? Are they going to be back? What kind of season are we seeing with the Jets? Kevin, you can go first.
I can't find any reason to believe that Aaron Rodgers can play 17 games. There's no way. I mean, he had all of last year off. It's an aging body as well. The one thing that bodes well for them, they've got some weapons on that team. You have that defense, and you have the receivers they do. If Mike Williams can stay healthy for them as well, put him with Garrett Wilson out there, and then you have Brees Hall at running back, who really came on last year, and he became one of the top running backs in the league. So if they can stay healthy, they'll be in the mix. But I can't see Aaron Rodgers playing 17 games, guys.
Yeah, go ahead, Nate.
Yeah, I mean, this team, in my opinion, is a little bit overrated. I mean, it's a bunch of injury riddled guys on the offense. You have, like Kevin said, Aaron Rodgers coming off the Achilles, Tyron Smith. It seems like every other year he misses half the season or the whole season with an injury. He's 34 years old now. You got Mike Williams also hurt every other year. So I mean, it's just a bunch of injury riddled guys. And if they can put a fully healthy season together, I mean, they could be a scary team, but it's a big if.
That this team, there are a lot of question marks with them. And Defensively, they got a lot of talent on his team now. We'll see if Salah, that's his calling card. He needs to get these guys, they got to get some turnovers to help this offense because they just, I know last year everybody was going to say Rodgers didn't really play. They only scored 15.8 points per game. They were just not doing anything. I know they kicked Wilson out the door, but they got to do better. In this division, they were only 2-4. So it's put up or shut up with Woody Johnson, their owner there. And then, Joe Douglas came from the Philadelphia Eagles, and he was supposed to be the big name guy, GM. We'll see if him and Salah survive this thing. And Aaron Rodgers, though, it's all on him. But I did not like that he was not at training camp. I mean, mini camp. He's over in Egypt. He said he was excused on it, but it's just not a good sign for the future of this team. So I think they can contend maybe for that number 7 spot, but in the division, I think they're looking up at the next 2 teams that we're going to talk about. The Miami Dolphins. You talk about firepower. We're going to probably do our offensive units coming up. This is one of the teams that has all the names on the paper for fantasy football wise and offensive units. And the question for the Dolphins is, how far can Tua take them? Go ahead, Nate.
Not very far. I mean, every year it's in the playoffs he doesn't perform, and you see when they start to play them colder games outside at the end of the year, they just fold, all of them. They're a bunch of speedsters, a bunch of track stars, and they just don't do well at the end of the year in the playoffs in the cold. They need to win the division in order to make noise in the playoffs. And like you saw last year in the Kansas City game, I mean, Tua just looked terrible in that game against the Chiefs. He's a warmer weather guy. I mean, they like I said, they need to win that division in order to make some noise in the playoffs.
Go ahead, Kev.
I detect a little bit of Buffalo Bills hate there from Nate on that side. But he's not wrong. He's not entirely wrong. They haven't done it in the postseason, and it's clear. I mean, that game they played in Kansas City, nobody could move in that game, but they really did nothing with the temperatures the way they were. Miami's problem, can they get a running back to stay healthy? Mostert had 18 touchdowns last year, which was unbelievable, but they seem to always have some injuries that seem to riddle them at certain times as well. And Tua, as we all know, with guys who was like, I don't want to put him in the same classification as Aikman or as Kurt Warner, but those double concussions he got, you're more susceptible at a certain point. So it's just one hit, and now where are you going with your quarterback?
Last year with his jiu-jitsu or whatever he did, staying healthy, overcame the concussions and everything. But it's interesting. He's gotten a lot lighter going into this season. So you wonder, is he going to be able to take the pounding for such a long part of their season? They are loaded on the offensive line, with Teron Armstead and the rest of the guys up front. They brought in Robert Jones for one of the guard positions. So they had the offensive line. They got all the weapons that we talked about, Waddle, Hill, and all the speedsters Nate was talking about. They even brought in Anthony Schwartz, another fast guy over there, and Chen is one of the fastest backs. But, are they built for the long run, for the cold weather? Because that's what football is all about. And Nate talked about that key game last year where they went to Buffalo and they lost. So, we're going to see what Miami's going to do. I think they are a playoff contending team, but I still think that the next team, the Buffalo Bills, are just a little bit better than them. So the Bills, the question is for Brandon Allen, Sean McDermott. I'm sorry, for Josh Allen, Sean McDermott, and Brandon Beal, the general manager, is the window closed on the Buffalo Bills? Everybody's asking the same thing. Is a window closed on this team? I guess I'll let the homer Nate go first. Go ahead.
I mean, in my humble opinion, the window's never closed when you have a top 2 quarterback on your team. I mean, they can't seem to get it done every year. They run into the Chiefs or the Bengals, and it seems like they just can't beat them. They get outplayed or outcoached by the higher up teams in the conference. But I mean, this is Josh Allen and Sean McDermott's division. Every single year, Sean McDermott puts together a top 10 defense. Josh Allen, you know what you're going to get out of him. A top 5 quarterback season every year. The thing is, though, with Josh Allen, he needs to turn the ball over less. He was throwing away games for them last year. They could have been the 1 seed easily last year, but they had the terrible start to the season. They had a good finish to the season. I think Joe Brady's a perfect offensive coordinator for Josh Allen because he's going to teach him how to turn the ball over less and rely more on a running game to show him that, like, hey man, you don't got to be Superman every single week and try and make the spectacular play every single time. Take the check downs, run the ball more, and I mean, they're they're just a good team every year. And I mean, the big thing with them is are they going to be able to replace all of their losses? They lost Stephon Diggs, Gabe Davis, Mitch Morse, Leonard Floyd, Tyrell Dodson, Jordan Poyer, Tre'Davious White, and Jordan Phillips. That's about 9 starters right there that they lost from free agency. They drafted a lot of young guys, so we'll see what they can do this year.
I agree with Nate on the fact it was like, and I'm not saying this just for the fact Josh Allen was my fantasy quarterback the last 2 seasons, but take it with a grain of salt, which I say. The red zone turnovers are brutal, man. Oh, my. Sometimes either eat the ball, throw it away. It's like you're not only costing my fantasy team, but you're costing your own team by throwing these picks in the red zone. I do like Cook at running back, though. I think he's got some versatility. They can do something with him. And I think if they get into the red zone situations more, that double tight end set they're going to have with Knox and Kincaid, that's going to be a tough cover for some teams.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that 2 tight end set for them. I think that Joe Brady is really going to capitalize on that. Ken Dorsey obviously was not the guy. Once they jettisoned him last year, they went on that run, winning 5 straight games at the end of the regular season, won a division. And 4-2 in a division. At home, this team is lethal. 7-2 at home. Offense was 6th ranked with 26.5 points per game. Defense was sneaky good. They only allowed about 18 points per game. But as Nate was pointing out, they lost a lot on that defense. So they're going to have to build around Epinesa and some of the other guys. They need Matt Milano to come back healthy. But I think the window has not closed yet on the Bills. I think Sean McDermott is really in tune with this roster, and it's going to be fun to see what they can do. But, they got to take that next step. Much like we talked about the Ravens, they got to take that next step if they want to challenge the Chiefs. So, good AFC East preview there. Good job, guys. We're here on Lloyd Vance's Insider Football on 102.9 The Game, the Broad Street South Network. And we're going to start looking at the different – so it's fantasy football time. And before we look at the offensive units, Nate wanted to talk – we have one more group we forgot to talk about. We're going to talk about the quarterbacks here on Lloyd Vance's Insider Football. So to get you ready, I remember back in the day when I first started playing fantasy football, Kevin, probably the same time you started, you had to get the quarterback. It was the quarterback-driven – but now fantasy, it's like you have to have the receiver. So take away, Nate, which quarterbacks are we going to talk about this season?
Yeah, so, I mean, most of the guys on my list are self-explanatory. In fantasy, you want a rushing quarterback because you get 6 points for a rushing touchdown instead of 4 for a passing. So anytime you can get a quarterback that can run in touchdowns, run for extra yards, it's a big bonus. So a lot of these guys on my list are rushing quarterbacks. My first guy, I got my number 1 ranked quarterback is Josh Allen. Last year.
Imagine that, Kevin.
No way. Get out of town.
He is the best fantasy quarterback. Last year, he was the number 1 quarterback. The year before that, he was the number 2 quarterback. He broke the single game season record last year with 15 rushing touchdowns. Tied that with Jalen Hurts last year. Both of them had that. And he just runs the ball so much that he gives you such an upside in fantasy. And also with the big plays, he's got a huge arm. He's always looking for the big play. So he could rack off a 60-yard touchdown at any point. This year, I expect him to come down a little bit from last year. I mean, he lost his number 1 receiver in Stephon Diggs. But you saw at the end of the year that they didn't really use Diggs that much, and he still put up productive fantasy numbers. So I think that he's going to be the number 1 quarterback again this year.
Kevin, what do you think?
It's hard not to like Josh Allen. Like I said, he's been my quarterback the last 2 seasons. I think losing Gabe Davis hurt as well, because that's also another wide receiver you have to get more in sync with now. It's how is he going to develop this chemistry with this new group of wide receivers that he has, and are they going to? You're right in the fact they're not going to take the same shots downfield now as well. But Josh Allen, with these top quarterbacks, you have to realize if I'm taking this guy, there's a wide receiver running back I'm leaving there for someone else to take. Can I get his value deeper in the draft?
Yeah, and the thing is, you just got to manage the negative plays. 15 interceptions last year. He just got to cut down on that. So go ahead, Nate.
Next guy, I got another guy who runs the ball a lot, Jalen Hurts. He didn't have the best season last year. Still finished as the number 2 quarterback, 21.5 points per game. At the end of the year, they were just a terrible offense, but he was still putting up fantasy numbers because of those rushing touchdowns. Like I said, he tied the single season record for touchdowns ran by a quarterback with Josh Allen last year. And that QB sneak is just overpowered, the tush push. And those are just easy money fantasy points. Him at the goal line getting that 6 points for the rushing touchdown. He runs the ball a lot, just like Josh Allen. And his offense is high-powered. He has probably 2 top 20 receivers on his team, and A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith. They bring in Saquon Barkley, a guy he can check the ball down to in the backfield and pick up easy yards for him. They also have a top 10 tight end in Dallas Goedert, who's a good receiving threat. So, I mean, Jalen Hurts has all the pieces around him to be successful this year. Also, bringing in Kellen Moore, who will be a better OC than Brian Johnson was last year. He'll give Hurts, I think, more effective passing lanes and passing targets for his receivers.
Yeah, definitely with Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts makes you never want to take an Eagles running back on your fantasy team. And I've never seen a team get more on the 1 yard line than the Eagles have also. It's like they had direct plays to get to the 1 and then just fall down. We got it from here, you know? I think Jalen, he's got to be better throwing interceptions. He can't throw as many as he did last year. But also, that being said, he has too much talent on an offensive end to look away from. Like you said, A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, you got Saquon, Goddard. They're going to put points up, and he's going to be a part of those points. He's hard. He's definitely, in my opinion, he's a top 3 quarterback in fantasy, no doubt.
And the interesting thing is, when we talk about real football, all the pressure's on him. He's going to be making $53 million per season, and there's question about his head coach, and his play calling ability. And everybody blamed Brian Johnson, kicked him out the door. But I'm hearing, and I talked to a lot of people this week that said it was Sirianni. Really, it was his offense. So, you just wonder how this is all going to work out. And then the big thing is, you talk about that tush push. Are they going to be able to replace what Kelsey brought to that, tush push and the center position? So a lot of question marks there. But I do agree with you. Jalen Hurts, as long as he cuts down on his interception, it's going to be a top fantasy quarterback.
Yeah, next guy I got, the best quarterback in football, obviously, Patrick Mahomes. Last year, he had a very down season. He didn't return on ADP for everybody. A lot of fantasy managers were mad. He was the 8th-ranked quarterback. He only averaged about 17 points per game. And this offense, he was getting sold all year by his receivers. They were just dropping touchdowns, dropping passes. He didn't trust any of his receivers. You could see it out there on the field. And his receivers were just not good last year. And he brings in Hollywood Brown and Xavier Worthy to go with Rashee Rice, who came on strong last year at the end of the year. You still have Travis Kelce. It's going to be a big year for the Chiefs. I think they're going to bounce back on offense. And I think Patrick Mahomes is going to have a massive MVP-type season this year.
I look at Patrick Mahomes as one of those guys. If I'm doing a fantasy draft, I want one of these guys to go grab him early, because that's going to let someone fall to me that wouldn't have fell to me. There's certain guys, they just love names. Like, I play with guys in the Philadelphia, Baltimore area. Hurts and Lamar Jackson are off the board earlier than they should be. Mm-hmm. I want someone to take Patrick Mahomes. You know why? Because they want their quarterback to be Patrick Mahomes. So I look forward to these guys being drafted. Don't get me wrong. You get me in the right spot. Would I take Mahomes? I'd be a fool not to. But I think I can get something just almost as valuable, because with Kansas City, the way they run that offense, like you said, his points were down last year. I think you can get equal value a little further down in that draft.
And when you're talking about fantasy football, it's not real football. So he picked it up at the end of the season, when the fantasy season's probably over and into the playoffs. And the thing is, sometimes in fantasy, you want a quarterback who's playing from behind. He can put up a lot of, empty calories. I always talk about Dak Prescott, his empty calories, and Mahomes, sometimes they have a lead, and then Andy Reid he takes his foot off the gas and they win the game. But in terms of fantasy football and prop bets, they may not hit some of the numbers. So, but you can't go against Mahomes. So yeah, I think he's a great pick for fantasy.
Yeah, you were just talking about empty stats, and this next guy, he's going to be on a projected not very good team this year. It's Kyler Murray. The last time we saw him in a fully healthy season, he averaged 24 points per game and was quarterback two on his roster with a guy having a number one receiver in DeAndre Hopkins. They bring in Marvin Harrison this year to be their number one wide receiver, who looks to be one of the best draft prospects of all time at the receiver position. And that offense has just all around gotten better. Trey McBride gets another year, who was a good tight end last year, came on strong at the end of the year. You still got James Conner, who's around. He always gives you good production at the running back position. Their O line is sneaky underrated. Paris Johnson was a great tackle last year, their first round draft pick. And Kyler is a running quarterback. He always looks to scramble if the play's breaking down. Like I said, like a lot of these other guys, he last fully healthy season he rushed for 800 yards and 12 touchdowns. So I mean, you get that rushing upside with Kyler. He's not a popular pick right now. He's one of my sleeper guys who I think you could get great value on in the eighth round.
Kyler Murray's one of those guys, and everyone has one. Everyone has a guy. He's just not your guy. It's just like, yeah, you're just for some reason it's like, no, I'm not going to draft him. And Kyler Murray's that guy for me, and he has skill set. There's no doubt about it. I don't know if can he stay healthy. I don't know if it's his limited weapons that he has right now. Even the ones he has are good. He doesn't have enough. I don't think. I think teams are definitely going to be doubling up Harrison. I think it's going to be tough for him this year. But if he runs and can stay healthy, he's a definite viable pick.
When I think with Kyler, a lot of people he's just short. He's like Doug Flutie. You know what I mean? A lot of people say, nah, he's just too short. He can't get it done. But he is a playmaker in fantasy, and a player that he has on his team that everybody's got to watch it is Trey McBride at tight end position. Kind of broke out last year. It's going to be fun to see what they can do with him, and of course, Harrison. You want to see how he can do and. It's going to be exciting for this team. They only won 4 games, so there's nowhere to go but up. But I think he's going to be able to put some fantasy points up. All right, Nate, who's our last quarterback?
And my last guy, we didn't get to see much of him last year, but I think the sky's the limit for this guy. It's Anthony Richardson for the Colts. Last year, he was on pace for 17 rushing touchdowns if he would have stayed healthy the whole year. Sort of broken the single season record. He's a big athletic quarterback. He's going to run a lot. He's got a huge arm. So he's looking for the big play. He kind of reminds me of a younger Josh Allen. And with Shane Steichen, he's a great offensive coordinator, head coach. I mean, great at calling offensive plays. You saw him last year with Gardner Minshew getting efficient looks for his whole team. I think with Anthony Richardson, like I said, the sky's the limit for him. I think he's going to have a great season this year.
Richardson, once again, is going to be one of those things. Can he stay healthy? Can he perform on that level? I think there's some guys who, what do you say, the empty calorie guys at the end who they're falling behind. They can hang some numbers up. I think Kirk Cousins, Jared Goff, those are guys that are going to sit there and hang some numbers. Are they going to win anything major? Probably not, but they're going to get you some points on your fantasy team as well. It's funny. It's as much as you need 2 quarterbacks in fantasy as well as real football. 2 guys that I would think about drafting on the back end, as much as I can't stand USC quarterbacks, take a shot at Caleb Williams down the road unless someone wants to take him early. I was like, I'll sit a roster spot for him. Jaden Daniels might be another one because I know, what was it, the year before, Justin Fields killed me because the guy had him at his backup quarterback, let him sit all year. Then when he finally got a chance to play, just blew me out. He scored like 44 points that week or something like that. So just to stash a young guy like that just to see.
Yeah, and I'll throw 2 quarterbacks that broke out kind of last year. C.J. Stroud, I think with all those weapons, I think he's just going to be a good get in fantasy football. He's going to put up probably close to 30 touchdowns, I think, this season passing. And then the other quarterback is Jordan Love. Hopefully if he gets that contract situation sorted out, I think LaFleur is going to make sure that he puts him in the best spots. And they have such a good core young group of playmakers. And getting Josh Jacobs running back, he definitely should have a big-time season as well. So a lot of choices at quarterback. Definitely thanks for breaking them down, Nate. Anything else before we let you get out of here?
Yeah, you guys were mentioning sleeper guys. Just one more guy. I think Trevor Lawrence is going to have a big bounce back season this year, and he's going like not drafted as a quarterback right now. So you could definitely pick him up on the waiver wire, or if you wanted to draft a back quarterback, like Kevin was saying, keep a roster spot for Trevor Lawrence.
All right, great job. Thanks for joining us here on Lloyd
Good
Vance's
work, Nate.
Inside. Here on Lloyd Vance Insider Football on 1029 The Game, the Coastal Sports Network. Make sure you check out our other hosts on Coastal Sports Network. We have Pete Shepard in the morning, then we have Middays with Q, and Angels on there as well. So check out all the other shows during the week. Give us a follow at CSN Florida on X. So glad everybody's here with us on 1029 The Game and Lloyd Vance's Insider Football. Kevin and I just broke down a lot of stuff. We talked about the AFC East, and we still all kind of need, Kevin and I all kind of believe that the Buffalo Bills will be the kings of that division. But I think it's not going to, I don't think it's going to be a runaway. I think it's going to be a fun division to watch. And in the last portion of the show, we're going to talk about, because we're talking about ratings. Every year I do my offensive unit ratings, kind of looking at all the teams and who has the best playmakers and just ranking every NFL team 32-1. So I won't go that far, but Kevin, why don't we start at number 10? I have the Baltimore Ravens. Now the Baltimore Ravens, they have Lamar Jackson. They got Derrick Henry coming over from the Titans. They got Flowers, who I don't know if there's going to be a suspension there. We'll see. They have Bateman, who's been around for a while. Aguilar. They have a very nice tight end in Andrews, and Likely, who came on last year when Andrews was hurt. So, what are you thinking about the Ravens' offensive weapons?
The Ravens play the football more of an old school type way of football. It's not the pretty, air it out kind of, they do the grinding part of it. You want to sit there and watch a game that's going to be, unless you're a big football aficionado, a snore, watch a Baltimore-Cleveland game, watch a Baltimore-Pittsburgh game. There's a lot of hitting, but if you got somebody there who wants to sit there and watch some offense, you've come to the wrong game. But they win with that style, and Derrick Henry fits that mold. So are they explosive offense? Sure, when Lamar's out and running and doing his thing, there's no doubt.
And they led the NFL in rushing last year by over 24 yards per game. So, Harbaugh and his offensive coordinator, they want to run the ball. They want to establish the run. I think it's Greg Roman's their offensive coordinator. No, it's Monken. It's Monken's their offensive coordinator now. Todd Monken, he wants to run that football like he did at Georgia. He wants to establish that, and then let that defense pin their ears back. So I think the Ravens, as long as their offensive line's healthy, they'll be a solid team. So I have them at number 10. Number 9, offensive unit. We talked about them earlier, and this may have to be a bounce back for them, but I have the Kansas City Chiefs at number 9. They have Patrick Mahomes, Pacheco, Kelsey, and then the receiving core, we got to see what they can do. Rice, Worthy, Hollywood Brown. So is 9 too high for them, too low? What do you think about the Chiefs?
It depends who you have 1 through 8 at this point, but I mean, they're the Kansas City Chiefs. They win football games. They score enough points to beat the other team, and that's the objective of the whole thing. I want to know, it's almost like, remember when McNabb finally got Terrell Owens? It's like if he would have had a wide receiver of that caliber his whole career, if we could get Mahomes, a wide receiver that was a all-pro wide receiver, what numbers could he really hang with this offense? The fact that they're winning as much as they have with what they've had gives more credit to Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, if he still had Tyreek Hill, and I think Hill's playing at a better clip now that he's with the Miami Dolphins, but that type of receiver, and they talked about it last year. Just think about that Eagles game, that bomb thrown to MVS. He's wide open, he drops the bomb, and they lose to the Philadelphia Eagles just basically off that play. I mean, it was right in his hands, and there was just they led the NFL in drops last year. I think it was 40 for their whole unit. So now they're trying to build and change some things around. We talked about Worthy coming into the draft. He runs a 4.21, the fastest in combine history. and Hollywood Brown. So they have the weapons and the best quarterback. So we'll see. But I think nine's right around where they're coming. At 8, I have the Cincinnati Bengals. We talked about Joe Burrow coming back from that wrist injury. They have Zach Moss now at the running back. Jamar Chase, one of the best young receivers out there. Higgins. And their tight end's Mike Gesicki. They don't really use the tight end like they used to, back in the day. But what do you think about the Bengals? Is 8 about right, or should they be higher?
I think that's about right with the Cincinnati Bengals. Once again, it goes to the health of Joe Burrow, how good this offense is going to be. But you put Higgins out there with Chase, those two alone you're going to score points. There's no way to contain those guys usually for a whole game, so they're going to break out at some point.
Yeah, they're going to be a fun team to watch, and that division it's the black and blue division, the AFC North. They're going to all beat up on each other, and as you said, the team that's going to be able to jump out and probably get to 4-2 in that division is probably going to win the AFC North. So it's going to be a fun one to watch. And as Burrow is healthy, I think that they are going to be explosive this year. At 7, I have the LA Rams. Matthew Stafford's 35-36, but Kyron Williams really came in on last year. They got him from Notre Dame. He stepped right in there and became the lead back on his team. Cooper Kupp had a partial breakout, bounce back season. Then he kind of got hurt again. Puka Nacua, he was a breakout player around the National Football League. He was just an explosive player at the receiver position. And then their tight end is very underrated in Tyler Higbee. So what do we think about the LA Rams?
I think we have to look also at the fact quarterbacks are playing longer these days. At least it seems like they are. They're playing until they're almost 40, some of them even over 40. So if Stafford still has the same work ethic and taking care of his body, and he could play solidly for another 3 seasons before some real decline. That they have offensive weapons there, there's no doubt about it. I know Higbee's coming off an injury, so they have work with him. I think they did a good job by drafting Corum as well as a backup running back, Kyron Williams. They're a scary team offensively. Imagine being a defensive coordinator trying to get a healthy Cooper Kupp and Nacua out there. That's tough work.
Yeah, and they have McVay, who's one of the best young minds still out there. He was one of the youngest head coaches when they hired him. So I definitely think they're going to be an explosive team. At number 6, this is an interesting one, the Atlanta Falcons. Now, they were down last year. They have Kirk Cousins coming in. Then they have Bijan Robinson, Pitts, Drake London. Mooney comes over from the Bears, and then you have Rondell Moore coming over from the Cardinals. So a lot of firepower with the Falcons in that downtrodden NFC South. So what do we think about the Falcons? Is 6 too high? Where do you think they should be?
I think the Atlanta Falcons are going to hang numbers this year. I think Drake London's going to have a huge season. I even think Kyle Pitts, who you've heard my opinions about him before, I think I even called him stiff. I think he's going to have a solid season just for the fact they're going to air it out. Kirk Cousins is probably going to throw anywhere from 4,500 to 5,000 yards this year if he stays healthy with that offense.
They're going to be fun to watch, and they're in the Georgia Dome. It's a fast track, and they're not hampered by Arthur Smith, who's now with the Steelers. I think Zach Robinson, who comes into offense coordinator, Raheem Moore's going to let him run that side of the ball. They're going to be a dangerous team, so they're going to be fun to watch. I have them at 6. And at the halfway point, we are talking about the top 10 NFL offensive units here on Lloyd Vance Insider Football on 102.9 The Game, Coastal Sports Network. Thanks for joining us again this week. At number 5, I have the Detroit Lions. So they were the darling of the league last year, and they put up a lot of points. They gave the Niners a pretty good game in the NFC Championship game. Some people say their coach is too aggressive on 4th downs, but you can't blame them with the offensive firepower this team has. You have Jared Goff, quarterback, Amir Gibbs, who was one of the breakout players. When we talk about fantasy, he's incredible. And then Montgomery had a great year as well at the running back position. They almost got 1,000, I think, from the 2 guys. They have Laporta, tight end, Amon-Ra St. Brown, who no one talks about as one of the top receivers out there, and then Jamison Williams, I think, who the breakout potential at the number 2 spot.
I think even before with last year's squad, they would have been where they are right now, a top five offensive unit. You had Jamison Williams on that team, and he's coming in like he played the back end of last year. They are going to be explosive. The one thing you have to see is now how all these defensive coordinators have had all off season to try to plan out, how to attack this offense a little more. How Laporta, who got a lot of open looks, now he's going to be a focal point of certain teams' defenses. With Jared Goff, I mean, that's a guy. How many times has he been written off? And he just keeps reinventing himself and putting up numbers, putting up numbers. They're a scary team. I wouldn't want to play them in a championship game, that's for sure.
Yeah, and Ben Johnson's one of the hot young coaches out there. He's their offense coordinator. He clicking on all cylinders. They really have to fix their defense. Aaron Glenn, that's where they concentrate on the draft, fix that side of the ball. But their offense is just explosive. And it starts with those two running backs, as well as Goff, who we've talked about, is Rodney Dangerfield. Nobody gives him the respect, but he just keeps putting up some big time numbers, way ahead of a lot of his counterparts. And he just got that big contract, so he'll still want to prove it. At number 4, they went to the Super Bowl, but they couldn't get it done. The San Francisco 49ers, they have names everywhere, and they have Mr. Irrelevant at quarterback. So, Brock Purdy, Christian McCaffrey, who's NFL leading rusher. You had Kittle at tight end, Ayuk, who's in a contract situation, Deebo Samuel, and, it's a lot of injury prone with him. And then they bring in Ricky Pearsall, coming from the draft from the University of Florida. And then don't forget about Jennings, who had a very good Super Bowl. So what do you think about the Niners, their offensive unit?
I like the fact right after we had last week's show, the very next day, Ayuk demands a trade came out. It was like, oh, there it is. There's a wheel possibly falling off right there. And Deebo Samuel, it's the health concerns with him. George Kittle has had health concerns, and they've used him a lot more as a blocker lately as well. I think San Francisco, from once again, Shanahan's another one of these boy geniuses and everything else. They seem to win in spite of losing a running back at least every 4 weeks or something like that. They keep winning. McCaffrey finally stayed healthy last year, so that helped them out. But once again, McCaffrey's had health problems in the past. This could be the year, because we talked about it last week as well. The window is closing to win a Super Bowl. You can only go to so many of these and expect to go back again. The injury bug might be ripe to hit them this year.
Yeah, and Purdy's a guy, the game tape's out on him. Could the league figure him out? They scouted him as a late round draft pick, undrafted guy for a reason. And, you can say he's overcome it, but if the injuries continue, like McCaffrey, you always got to worry about him. Mitchell, the backup running back, he's a little injury prone. George Kittle, Samuel, Deebo Samuel, he probably only played about 8 games last year, so he's always banged up as well. So it's a situation where, if healthy, yes, they're a top 5 offense, but they do have some question marks, but they're going to be fun to watch. And they're another team like the Chiefs. They are the hunted. Everybody wants to beat them because they like to put the bulletin board material out there and say, well, we're going to back it up. So it's going to be interesting with the Niners this year. Number 3, their big rival, and this is Kevin's team, the Philadelphia Eagles. I got them at number 3. In spite of Sirianni, I won't go on about him, but they have Jalen Hurts, who Nate broke down great in terms of his playmaking ability. Jalen Hurts, a quarterback. Saquon Barkley, the crown jewel of free agency. It's been fun watching Hard Knocks, watching the Giants cry over. Did you see Mara when Mara said, if the Eagles get him, I'm going to be beside myself. I'm not going to be able to deal with it. I started laughing thinking about that. He needs some antacid when they signed him. So they have A.J. Brown, Goddard, tight end, and then, of course, Devontae Smith. No one talks about the Heisman Trophy winners. They're number 2. So talk to me about the Eagles.
I have watched I watched the first 3 episodes of Hard Knocks the other day. I did a little binge watch on that, and it's just like it's almost like their girlfriend's breaking up with them. Saquon, it's like, just don't go out with that guy. And then it's like they pick the Eagles. It's like, oh, it's gonna be so horrible to hear, especially on New York radio and everything else, if Saquon starts going off on it. The Eagles, they should be ashamed of themselves if they aren't a top 3 offense. The talent that is on that roster right now is it's probably the best you've ever seen as an Eagle watcher as far as talent at every position. The offensive line is going to be interesting without Kelsey this year, but Cam Jurgens, he should be the guy who should be able to step up if anyone could to take Kelsey's spot. Jalen Hurts, if he can cut down the interceptions, he's unbelievable to contain if he's moving around. That is a top 3 offense, and if they're not, there needs to be somebody to lose their job over it. And I'm not pointing any fingers at anyone, but some head has to roll if this is not a top 3 offense.
And I agree with you that they're top 3, and they should be that way. Now, Kellen Moore's coming over there. That's a big get in the offseason. He's coming over, and they said he, was able to work all his magic with Dak and put up all those points with the Chargers and Herbert. Well, the Eagles are expecting that type of situation because they blame Brian Johnson and jettisoned him out the door. We're not sure whether it's Sirianni or whether Johnson, but Moore has to work with this, getting Saquon's like icing on the cake for this team. They had Swift as kind of a spare part last year, but Saquon's going to come in there. He's going to be able to catch 60 balls and just be the engine of this team, and they won't be so pass happy in key situations. So there's just weapons galore with this team, and they're going to be fun to watch in terms of fantasy football. And Hurts does have to cut down on his interceptions, but this is a tough team to beat offensively, and I am interested to see about that tush push. Like, what are they going to do? The NFL's going to allow it for another season, but can the Eagles execute it at the level they did before now that Kelsey's gone? So Eagles at number 3. Number 2, and this may be the young guy stepping up, and everybody saying maybe a little early for this group, but number 2, I put the Houston Texans. And it may be biased from last year, but I just think with getting Diggs, and we talked about Joe Mixon coming over, and now Cam Akers, they just have weapons galore. C.J. Stroud, Mixon, Dalton Schultz, who no one talks about at the tight end position, Tank Dell, who was playing very well last year before he got hurt. Diggs comes over from the Bills, and he doesn't have to be that prohibitive number 1. And then you have Nico Collins and a bunch of other receivers that no one's talking about. So the Texans, they're the young up-and-comers. I have them at 2.
On paper, most definitely. They're definitely top 5, top 2. We'll see. I've talked about it before with other people and with you on the show. As long as they're winning, they will be fine. Once they start losing a game or two, going a little slide, there's only one ball on that field. So we're going to see if anybody starts becoming a prima donna, a little diva-esque, like, I want my touches, because that can break up a relationship with a quarterback.
I think I know who you're talking about.
I think you know as well. So as long as they're winning and they're going to be firing on all cylinders, they're going to be a fun team to watch this year, and I'm very much looking forward to it, to be honest.
Yeah, well, and I'm sure Josh Allen won't be sending any love letters down there to the Texans and Diggs. That's who we're alluding to. Unfortunately, there's always got to be that Antonio Brown, T.O. type of receiver out there. And you need him to win games, but, maybe a pain in the butt in the locker room. And that was the situation with Diggs. We'll see how he fits in there. DeMeco Ryan seems like a no-nonsense coach. So it's going to be fun to watch this team. And they are going to be explosive. I'm sure a lot of fantasy football players, prop bet people are looking at the Texans to make some plays out there. My number 1 squad, and we talked about him earlier, there is just so much firepower in this team. You're like, wow, the Miami Dolphins, And I think this Tua, he's probably an average quarterback, but he's got so much around him that he's a quarterback that's overevaluated. And it's going to be interesting to see, does he get the bag like we talked about Trevor Lawrence and Jordan Love and these other guys, but he's due for a payday as well. So you have Tua, Achane, Mostert, who you talked about earlier, led the NFL in rushing touchdowns. Tyreek Hill, obviously, Jalen Waddle. They even have Odell Beckham Jr., or what's left of him. He's playing for them. And then they have Jonnu Smith at the tight end position. So, what are we thinking in terms of the Dolphins?
I think one of the things that works perfectly for the Miami Dolphins is where they play. Where a lot of stadiums are getting cold and the weather starts kicking in, they play in gorgeous weather majority of the time. And that helps for a lot of offense. It lets you air it out more. You don't have to sit there and worry about these freezing rain games and run the ball and little short passes here and there. And their offensive style is to go down the field. Why wouldn't you with the weapons you have? You air it out, it just hasn't translated well in the postseason. They are a scary team, and you're right in the fact that you said Tua's ability, rather, is he a mid-range quarterback or not? You have those pieces around you. It makes a mid-range guy look like a top-tier guy like that. So they are an explosive offense, and they're definitely going to hang their numbers.
And they're going to be interesting. Mike McDaniel, everybody said about him, he's the young mad genius out there. He comes with that McVay tree, and they're going to put up some points. So it's going to be fun to watch them chasing the Buffalo Bills. But, another great week here on Lloyd Vance's Insider Football. That was fun talking about offensive units. Definitely check out the rest of the CSN lineup. Pete Shepard, 7 a.m. to 10 in the morning. We have Martinez and Company, 10 to 12, and Middays with Q, 12 to 2. So check the other shows out on CSN Florida here. So another great week here on 102.9 The Game. Thanks for Kevin for joining. Nate did a great job with his fantasy corner. We'll keep him coming along before he has to head back to school. And I'm sure we'll have more training camp talk and much more to talk about as we get ready for this season. So thanks for joining us. We'll talk to you next week.